First episode of the Career Exploration podcast by the University of Guelph's Experiential Learning Hub. My name is Natalie. I'm a career services peer helper, and I'm joined today by the lovely Ashley Meyers, Chief Operating Officer of AntoXa Corporation and Director of Special Projects at PlantForm Corporation. Welcome, Ashley. It is so good to have you here.
Thank you, Natalie. Happy to join.
Awesome. So if you could launch into this, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how your path has led you to where you are today?
Sure, happy to. I have followed opportunities as they have presented themselves, and I really truly believe that's kind of the credit for my success, or at least how I look at it. So I did an undergraduate degree in molecular biology and genetics at the University of Guelph, and through that program I had an opportunity to do a thesis project with Dr. Chris Hall in the School of Environmental Sciences. And so I followed that and really enjoyed it. And a couple months in, he offered me an opportunity to do a master's. And I'd never really thought about doing a master's, but I thought, well, I enjoy this, so I might as well give that a go. And I did that and was successful at that. And then I always had a passion for, antidotes and drug development and human health, but not in the sense that I wanted to be a doctor, more in the sense that I wanted to be the one developing the cure. Like if you can think about like Outbreak or World War Z or Contagion or something like that, like that's kind of my sweet spot. So when I left Chris, he actually got some contracts with the Canadian Department of Defense working in areas like that, and he called me up and offered me a job to not only do research on it but be a project manager for it, and so I gladly accepted that, came back to work at the University of Guelph as a research associate, and then Chris decided to retire, and really that was a great opportunity because he'd started PlantForm Corporation, which was focused on biosimilar drug development. And he and I pitched to the PlantForm board and executive team, bringing on all of the defense-related projects and their staff and contracts and funding, and I would lead those. And so I brought them in, and within 18 months, the company was spinning out AntoXa because the programs were so successful. And I got to grow with those programs, really. So
that's amazing. Yeah, so learning on the job, really.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things with like a small company is you wear multiple hats. So you can be a dishwasher one day and you can be the president the next day, it feels. And it's really good for people like me. I'm very independent and I learn well on my own, and I like working with people, but I'm also eager to and hungry to kind of learn and grow. So for me, it was an excellent opportunity because there were lots of new challenges that were always being presented, and you could grow with each of those.
That's fantastic. And so about your current positions then, in a few words, can you tell us about what your work looks like as Chief Operating Officer of AntoXa Corporation, but also Director of Special Projects at PlantForm Corporation?
Sure. So with PlantForm Corporation, the special projects basically means anything outside of its primary pipeline. So that's not a biosimilar product. So I do a lot of our contract research projects with different clients. So we've had some mid-sized pharmaceutical companies, we've had some startups, academic groups all reach out to us and want to try to express their protein in the plant system that PlantForm has developed. And so I'm the one who prepares the proposals, does the project management, the budgeting, the reporting, all of that kind of management of those activities. So for AntoXa, though, it's a little bit different. I'm the Chief Operating Officer there, and really I get the opportunity to look both outwards and inwards. And so what I mean by that is I'm doing a lot of negotiations with clients or potential clients or collaborators. So I do a lot of license negotiation, collaborative research agreements, but I also manage a lot of our projects and product development internally. So I manage our lead products and kind of work together with the PlantForm team to see those along their way. So it's kind of a nice balance of business development activities as well as product development.
And did you have any prior experience with the business side of things, or is this something that you just picked up as you were going along in the job?
It's something I've picked up. I think I really started honing those skills a little bit with the project management. And so I started to dabble that when I came back to work for Chris Hall in 2012. And through that, I got a lot of experience writing grants, dealing with the clients, doing a lot of budgeting, dealing with subcontractors, negotiating different agreements. And then it just kind of, one minute you feel like you're doing project management, and the next you feel like you're doing business development. So it was kind of a really natural transition.
Right, absolutely. And as a woman in a STEM related field, what specific advice would you like to give young girls and women who are exploring their careers in STEM related industries?
Go for it. Simply put, I didn't have role models in my family and in my direct circle that really pushed me towards science. I came from a very business oriented family, and I didn't have that role model, but I always had a passion for sciences, right from like physics all the way to biology. And I think going to the University of Guelph and having some of the opportunities I had there really pushed me and nudged me in that direction. But I will also say that, I had some great male mentors as well. And I think they didn't look at me as a young woman in a STEM field. They just treated me like I was a young student in that field. And so I never had to deal with some of the issues that other, women have faced. So my advice would just be, if you've got an interest in it, go after it, because we can certainly use more women. There's still a lot of men at the top, but it's becoming more and more common to see young women, and it's certainly a pleasure to work with them. And I think women, we bring a little bit of a different perspective, and we tend to be a little more open to feedback, constructive feedback. And I've had some positive feedback myself about that, working with some men in some accelerator programs where they've said, it's the women who really sit down, listen to the feedback, have a discussion about what, question it, have a discussion about it, and then take kind of the best approach forward, as opposed to some of the men who are just like, nope, this is why I'm doing it this way. And so, women, we bring a little bit of a different approach to it. So I hope that there's lots of women out there, young girls who are considering STEM, and I think our government is also trying to do more to promote that as well. So go for it is my advice.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. And for our listeners who might be beginning to explore careers in the biopharmaceutical industry, what direction do you believe the industry is heading in? And do you think COVID-19, the pandemic, has impacted the direction?
Absolutely, COVID-19 has impacted the direction in my field specifically. So AntoXa is a biotech company that is focused on delivering medical countermeasure solutions. So these are things like antidotes or even diagnostic kits and that type of thing. And I've given many pitches where I've had to say, it's not a matter of if, but when you'll see the next chemical warfare attack, or you'll see the next emerging virus or something like that. And people kind of nod their head, and they would agree, because yes, they do know that it's, not a matter of if, but when. But I think this last 10 months even has been a real eye-opener
Mm-hmm.
from everyone from pharmaceutical professionals to government professionals to even my parents, who have nothing to do with science. Like I said, they're all recognizing that this is important and kind of wishing we had done more.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see governments and institutions do more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an exciting time to be in this field for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think the pharmaceutical industry and the biotech industry um, are going to come out of this on top,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I don't mean that like in the sense that, oh, you know, something horrible has happened and we're going to win. I just mean to say that we're finally going to get some of the attention in this area that I think we've been lacking, because it's often when you're faced with the choice to fund a program where people are dying today from heart disease or suffering from Alzheimer's or whatever their medical condition might be, those people are impacted today
Mm-hmm.
versus planning for a threat that you hope never comes
Exactly.
is a harder sell. And I think people are now realizing that it really is just around the corner. So.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think every industry is feeling it. I know the students of University of Guelph are definitely feeling it. So absolutely, I think you're right. There's going to be a huge change in the industry, and I'm very excited to see that change. So what would you say some of the biggest challenges that you face in your work?
Again, kind of going back to it, is getting funding for these programs. It has been hard to convince your traditional venture capitalists that this is relevant. It should be funded.
Mm-hmm.
And not only because it's a matter of it's like if and when, but it's also their smaller market sizes. So when you're trying to convince somebody that they need to provide an antidote to a chemical warfare agent that's impacting a handful of people on the other side of the world, and maybe your armed forces, you hope that you have somebody listening who's altruistic.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of the venture capitalists have investors who are looking for the next blockbuster drug.
Right.
They're looking for the Herceptin, they're looking for the Humira, they're looking for those big returns on investment. So that has been the challenge, is convincing people that this is worthy of making an investment. And I think going back to the previous question, you know, COVID-19 is going to help show that it is worth it. This is important research and it needs to move along. Otherwise, we'll be left exposed again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in your experience, what skills or attributes do you think contribute to someone's success in any management position, be it in the biopharma industry or otherwise?
I really believe communication is probably the most important skill. I think your ability to communicate with different types of people is really important. I once took a leadership course and they talked about, you know, red, green, and blue communicators. So people who are red are very direct and they only want to hear the absolute essentials and they don't want to hear all the soft, fluffy stuff. And then there's green communicators who are very analytical, and blue who want to share their life story with you. And I think when it comes to being a manager, you have to be able to pick up on who needs what from you and how to communicate with them, because that's part of building a good team and being there for those different types of people. But I also think, you know, it's also, communication is really important to articulate your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes in from your day-to-day email writing
Mm-hmm.
to the way you communicate in reports.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more important than just putting a bullet line on your resume that says an effective oral and written communicator. You have to be able to go beyond and really truly demonstrate the importance of it and how you can excel in that. And then if I can add one more thing, I would also say being really reliable and dependable,
Mm-hmm.
getting along with people, because I can train you to come and work in my lab,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't reprogram you to be reliable and dependable and to get along with people.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm hiring people, I'd much rather have someone who has part of the skills I'm looking for, but is going to get along with my team,
Right.
than somebody who has all the skills I'm looking for, but isn't a team player and is going to rock the boat.
Absolutely.
So I know that's not kind of a manager type of thing, but I think it plays into it quite well.
Mm-hmm. And what advice do you have for students who want to become better communicators? Are there any programs you would suggest? Any kind of teamwork activities you would suggest?
Talk to somebody, ride the bus, and have a conversation with them. It really can be as simple as that. I think too often we're guilty of putting our heads down and kind of being on our phone,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't take the opportunity to talk to those around us anymore.
Right.
And there's so much to learn from everybody, but it also is a great opportunity to practice that elevator pitch, as silly as it might sound. And you kind of roll your eyes when you hear that because you're like, oh, when am I ever going to need this? But there are going to be times when you just have 1 or 2 minutes to tell somebody about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't effectively communicate who you are or what you're doing in those couple minutes, you're at a loss and you're doing yourself a disservice. So I really think taking those opportunities to talk to people and meet people are really important. Not being afraid to put your hand up and ask questions too. That's a good way to learn to communicate.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people who struggle with English. It may not be their first language, but I think taking those opportunities are a pretty low risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be kind of my advice to start there. Yes, I'm sure there's all sorts of fancy Toastmaster courses and things like that you can go and do. And I'm not trying to say that they're not going to be helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but for most of us, we can get by just by talking to those around us.
Yeah.
Explain what you do and what you're passionate about to your grandmother. There's a really good one, right? Like
a really good one. The number of times I've tried to explain to my grandmother what it is I'm doing, nothing gets by.
yeah, because you can't use the same language that you would use with your peers or with your professors, right? So you have to be able to speak about the topic you're doing in a way that's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get your grandmother to understand and follow you, then you're going to be good. So yeah.
That's good to know. Now, if you could go back to the very beginning of your career and start over again, is there anything that you would do differently?
I'm pretty proud of my accomplishments and the path I've taken. But I do have one small regret,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish that when I had the opportunity to do my PhD, I wish I had taken. I think that I don't need my PhD to get where I am or to, excel at this point. I think my experience is kind of speaks for itself,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I missed an opportunity.
Okay.
And I think I didn't take it at the time because it was an opportunity to roll up into a PhD at the University of Guelph. And I felt like I'd done my undergrad there and I'd done my master's and I wanted to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time I'd realized that, I was already, neck deep into my career and enjoying what I was doing. And the thought of going back to being a student was just not as appealing as continuing to, the path forward. So I think if you have that opportunity, give it some serious thought, because that's a small regret I have.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I'm proud of where I've gotten.
Absolutely.
And I don't think not having it has held me back, but I think I've had maybe exceptional circumstances that have allowed me to excel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's wonderful to know that you, without having a PhD, you've been able to progress so far in your career. It's really uplifting to hear that, I think, to a lot of people, because there's probably an assumption, I know, between a lot of students that, oh, if you want to get really high and climb that career ladder in a science-related industry, then you need to have a PhD. But it's wonderful to know that if you're passionate about what you do, then you can get very far without it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Now, just a final question for you before we move along to the student submissions. What is your top career exploration tip for our student listeners?
Don't be afraid to try something and not like it. There's a lot of merit in learning what you don't want, just as much as you might learn what you do want to do. And I think some of the best ways to explore that are really to start reaching out to people and asking questions. So instead of just asking, well, what do you do for a living? Ask that question, but say, well, what do you like about that? How did you get into that? Kind of go scratch a little deeper. And for me, I didn't have a lot of people in my circle that were in the science community. So it was difficult to really figure that out. But I think once you get out and you can kind of like talk to people, you can really start to get some of those answers, because it's not like a university classroom.
Right.
University is really there to teach you how to be a self-learner and to give you the skills and the background and the foundation to do that. But you need to figure out how you're going to apply those and what you're going to apply them to, because most degrees don't come with a profession. We're not all going to be nurses or doctors or dentists. We don't go into those professional programs. A lot of us are taking biochemistry or molecular biology or marine biology or whatever we might take. And, aside from marine biology, where there are some actual marine biologists, most of us don't settle in our field that we studied in, right? So you have to find a way to explore what else is out there. And I think talking to people and scratching beneath the surface is important.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're now going to move along to 2 questions that students submitted through the University of Guelph's Experiential Learning Instagram account. The first question we have for you is, did you ever think you would end up where you are today?
Wow, no, not at all. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So that was pretty high up on my list of, things I wanted to do. But then I started doing research and I realized I want to be part of the healthcare profession, like from a broad sense, but I really don't want to deal with patients. I like interacting with people, but I don't want to deal with them when they're at their worst. I'd rather be helping to innovate and kind of solve, that problem at a research level. So that was eye-opening for me in about 4th year, and kind of the first year of my master's was that, oh, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I think my place is somewhere beyond the traditional healthcare kind of system. And even, even today, I'm at times kind of surprised where my career has led me, but I'm very proud of it. And I really enjoy what I do. And I like that it's a little different too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. And a second student asked, how did you decide what career path to follow?
I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I've really just followed opportunities. And I had a mentor who gave me great advice: follow the money. And so I followed the money through these government contracts and opportunities. And they had money for particular research. And so I followed that and I just kept on it. And as a result, I was able to, be a founder of a subsidiary company for PlantForm. And, it also helps that I aspired as a child to, to be like some of those actors on Outbreak or Contagion, but I don't think I ever truly saw myself in that kind of field. I just kind of got lucky and followed the opportunities to be there.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic advice if it's gotten you to where you are today. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that'll do it for this episode of the Career Exploration Podcast. Ashley, Ashley, sorry. Thank you so much for being here and for talking with us today. I'm sure our viewers are going to think your advice was amazing, so thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Natalie.
And if you would like to see more podcasts, then please give this one a thumbs up and leave a comment down below, just letting us know who else you would like us to see interviewed. Thank you again, Ashley. You were a fabulous guest, and I hope I will get to interview you again sometime soon in the future.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.